Welcome back to Cut on the Diamond, a show where two athletes answer a big question. Is it talent or was it just dumb luck? I'm your host, 10-year Major League veteran and zero-time All-Star Trevor May, and today's guest was a teammate of mine and a good friend. Born in Greenfield, Indiana in 1987, this man's accolades include over 1,800 Major League innings over the last 12 seasons, an appearance in the 2021 All-Star Game, and the single-season strikeout record at the University of Missouri. Also, he just eclipsed 200 home runs allowed in his career. Congrats on that. Current free agent Kyle Gibson. Kyle Gibson, thanks for joining us, and
Oh
congrats on
man,
the 200 homers. That's tough to get to. You got to throw enough to give up that many homers, right?
what an intro! I didn't realize that I had gotten to that. Those are the milestones that the clubbies and your teammates don't keep track of, and they're the ones that you don't have a team meeting for to celebrate. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, of course. There aren't many that you do have a team team meeting to celebrate. By the way, for those of you at home that don't know this, the normal one is 10 years of service time,
Mm-hmm.
which is usually a bottle of Dom
Yep.
Perignon, champagne. But you do not drink. So were you given a bottle of Dom for your 10 years, or was it something
So
else?
it was a team signed one,
Uh,
just like the commemorative.
yeah.
Aaron Hicks and I, as we were teammates with him as well, we ended up getting 10 years like 3 days apart.
Oh
So they
wow.
did our 10-year ceremony together in Baltimore, which was a really cool experience because somebody that I got really close with in Minnesota being drafted a year after him and then really going up together. So to get to that milestone at the same time was awesome. So we both got a bottle. The Orioles gave us a really cool picture of a action shot from each of our teams. The words 10-year service. And yeah, it was awesome. And then they took one of our coaches has a wife that does custom painting, and they bought a glove and custom painted it. It's in my basement. I wish I had it with me. It's so cool. They paint from Missouri all the way through all the teams, some of the accolades I've had. And it's one of the coolest things I've ever been given. So that was kind of my big 10-year gift, was that custom painted glove with kind of the whole picture of my career to that point.
That is very cool. And now that I'm thinking about it, you don't have to drink the Dom. You could just sit there.
So you know what? It's just a gift, right? Like you get a cool bottle of whiskey, you get a cool bottle of
Yeah,
champagne.
yeah.
After 2022, we just got a Johnny Walker sent everybody on the team like a commemorative
That's cool.
2022 NLCS champ. So that's sitting up on the shelf. Probably will never get opened, but
Probably.
you get some cool
If
bottles
it
like
ever
that.
does,
That
though, it'll be nice and aged.
it'll be
Uh,
great.
maybe it isn't you. Maybe it's the kids. Maybe who knows? Who knows? 50 years of marriage or something. You're like, you know what? It's time.
It's time. Let's do it.
It's time. Let's do it. Why not? Been around for a long time. Let's do this. Well, dude, that's really cool. I forgot that Hicks was with you there. That is that's awesome. I should have played another year. I didn't get one of those. Now that I'm thinking about all this stuff, I saw a lot of people get them, and I was like, maybe I should have. Went through one more spring training, but alas, thinking about that kind of made it not really. I didn't really care anymore at that point. You know me. All right. So how we start these, and I love this because we're only on the third episode, and we've already had two guys from Indiana. We just talked about this gentleman, Tommy Hunter, before. Before we just started because you played with him, but you
Hmm.
grew up in Indiana. I grew up in Washington. I think we've spoken about this together in the past about not necessarily baseball hotbeds in places. Not that there's not good competition, but we're not in East Cobb here. So take me through it a little bit. What it was like playing in Indiana, because Tommy kind of talked about how it was travel teams and kind of everyone kind of went to the same kind of teams in the area. But like, were you one of the guys, because you're a first rounder, you went to college, um, were you one of the guys who's like, he's one of the guys, he's gonna be, he's gonna go to D1 and play when you were like 14, or were you like a late bloomer? What type of guy were you?
Yeah, Indiana baseball. um, my dad, and I mean, it goes back to youth baseball because the Indiana Bulls was really the main travel team. And I don't remember if Tommy played on them or not, but a guy like Lance Lynn, those were the
He did.
teams that those guys played on, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't that type of a player. So my dad ended up starting a team, right after Little League, and I played on that team for most of my youth. And
Okay.
um, Indiana baseball it still is probably similar. You just have the 5 to 10 guys a year where you're like, man, those guys are really good. Whereas, like you said, East Cobb has 500 of those guys
Yeah.
every single year. But no, I was definitely a late bloomer. I was, at the age of 12, I was the fundamental, as you can tell in my pitching motion and everything
Yeah.
I do. I was the need to do it right so that I can do it well. If I was going to be a hitter, I had to practice a lot. If I was going to be a pitcher and try to throw hard, I had to throw a lot. So, I mean, I stopped playing basketball after seventh grade because I hadn't grown, I wasn't very strong, and I needed to focus on one thing if I was going to be any good at it. So, it was probably the summer after my sophomore year. I went down to the IMG Academy, and I had had surgery during my freshman year on a fractured growth plate in my elbow. Couldn't play the whole summer. And my dad and mom graciously said, "Hey, you've been down to a camp here before. We know what they're all about. They have a summer program for high school students. If you want to do it and play in their summer league, we'll send you there and it's done." And it was tough because I didn't get to see any of my friends this summer. I didn't get to play on the team I would have played on, but there was just something in me that said this is going to be best for development. It was workouts 3 days a week, the whole gamut they do. And those next 3 summers, I did that. And it was that summer where my dad asked one of the coaches, "Hey, do you think Kyle can play D1 or what do you think?" And the coach said, "Mr. Gibson, I think if Kyle keeps on the track, he is, I know it doesn't look like it, but he could possibly be there." But out of high school was a 36 round pick by the Phillies. I didn't get offers from huge D1 schools. It was, was Missouri was the best offer I got and where I
Huh.
wanted to be. So
I didn't
I
know you were
definitely
drafted by
wasn't.
the Phillies.
I was
I
drafted by
did
the
not know.
Phillies in
How
the
did that
36th
never come
round.
up? How did I know? Or you probably told me.
I
I
don't
just
know.
didn't. I
I don't
just
know. I
didn't
mean,
remember.
we've talked about a lot of stuff, So I mean, it's just one of those things where I don't know how it didn't come up, but yeah, 36th round. Never really had maybe a small chance of signing, but I kind of knew from the get go. I graduated at 6'3", 165 pounds, so
Yeah.
I was not a physical specimen to say the least.
Yeah.
I needed a few years of seasoning at Missouri, but um, yeah, it was. So I didn't spend some of my high school in Indiana because of that. Just trying to get to the point where maybe I could be someone who could get some college offers. But Purdue, a lot of Midwest schools, I didn't even get offers
Really.
from, quite honestly.
Wow. Okay. So the Missouri happens. You 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 go there. And the alma mater of you and Scherzer didn't overlap, right? Max Scherzer went
No,
to
we didn't.
Missouri. He was there right before you, correct? He was out, and then the
Correct.
next year you went there.
Yep, yep.
So you go to Missouri. At what point when you were playing at Missouri was then pro ball the point? Because it sounds like, and I had a very similar kind of path to you in that, like, the next level was like, yeah, I can go play in college. I signed really early at Washington, but I was like, professional baseball. I was like, oh, that's going to be after college. I'm from Washington. And then suddenly, 6 months later, oh, wait, I could get drafted. Was this early? Was this really good freshman year? And you're like, okay, this is probably going to happen. Or was this like you had to develop?
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of developing to do. I think if you would have asked my dad when I turned down that offer from the Phillies, he played a little bit of college baseball at a junior college, but I don't think he was very happy that I didn't take that opportunity to play professional baseball because we all know it's never a guarantee.
Yeah.
And I was coming off a surgery my freshman year. It just wasn't a guarantee. So, but I do think my freshman year I gained about, I don't know, 15 pounds probably, grew another inch maybe, and started throwing a little bit harder. Closed most of my freshman year, made a couple starts here and there, but I think that was the time, had a really good team and I was throwing the ball well. That was kind of the time at the end of that year where I probably got a little bit more traction nationally, draft wise.
Mhm.
And then from there, it was just, okay, am I going to keep gaining weight and getting stronger and developing as a pitcher as I get a chance to start? My sophomore year, Aaron Crow was our Friday night guy who was also a first rounder in
Yeah.
'08. I was the Saturday/Sunday guy, so I was able to really learn from Aaron those first 2 years of college, which helped me out a lot. Um, and then it really kind of springboarded to a junior year where I was the Friday night guy and was throwing harder. Developed a slider that kind of carried me through the first 10 years of my career here in the big leagues, and I always had a feel for a changeup. Always was kind of a pitchability type player, type pitcher, because until I started throwing harder in college, I really just had to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you go and I'm pretty sure, I don't know. Do you still hold the strikeout record for a season, 131? Is that your junior year?
So yes, so my junior year, I get drafted a little later in the first round than projections because I had a fractured forearm. I had
Hmm.
a stress fracture in my forearm. The last three starts were maybe the most pain I've ever had pitching. And we're in the regional, throwing game two. And after the fifth inning, my arm is killing me. I was like, Coach, I'm toast. Like, we had lost the first game. And the pitching coach at the time, the assistant pitching coach, Brian DeLunis, who was with the Mariners, he said, well, I think Coach Jameson was really trying to get you through like 7 or 8 innings today to set us up for the next two games of the regional. Said, all right, I'll go out here and throw 81 miles an hour for as long as you need to because I had zero velocity. And then the last inning, I ended up getting that strikeout. And Coach Lewis was like, let me guess, you're probably done now, right? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, you just tied Max for the strikeout record for a season. And because of the pain in my arm and everything going on, I had no idea what was going on. I was just trying to get to the next inning.
Yeah.
But when I look back on it, they pushed me, and that was something that was pretty cool. To when you look at personal accolades, you know how it is. Like
Yeah.
you're not looking at them in the moment. You're really trying to get through a season. You're trying to have a successful team year, and then you look back on it, you're like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually that's it's really interesting you say that because I can say for me, I didn't really enjoy any accolade until that last year in Oakland. It happens when you're grandpa on the team, even though in terms of the league, like I would have been still one of the older guys, but not the oldest on any other team. But I was grandpa. They called me old balls. I had a couple guys call me grandpa a couple times. I'm like, dude, I'm 33. But I tried to really like just if I hit a milestone because I didn't have an all-star game. I'm not going to go to the Hall of Fame. I was planning on being done, so it's like I'm not going to really accumulate much more. So like I remember 500 strikeout was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It took me forever. I was on 499 for like 2 weeks, and which is weird for me, not striking
Yeah,
somebody out in 3 or 4
right.
outings in a row.
Yep.
Uh, so I remember being like, "What is going on? Is this really going to happen to me?" But yeah, I think it's something I try to talk to guys or ask about, and was like, how do you enjoy when things go well? Especially as a reliever, most guys said when they walk off the field and they have that look on their face, it's like 90% relief.
Yep.
It's like not like I'm the man. It's like, oh, thank God. Okay, let's now and tomorrow, let's not give up any runs and we're cooking, right? That's
Yep.
kind of how we think. And it's a weird thing to like, to think that your whole career, your whole life, you're like, okay, stay humble, like don't get too high, don't get too low. But sometimes that can make it so like the highs aren't really, you don't let them be high, and they should because you accomplish something cool just for a little bit and then move on. It's I feel like guys are kind of that's changing. And I'm kind of glad it is. With obviously without I don't like it when people show people up or disrespectful, but enjoying playing the game, I think got tied into it. So it's good to hear. It's good to hear that yeah, dude, your career has been that's a like 1,800 innings. That's a lot of innings, man. You've been around for a
Yeah,
long time.
it's something that I don't know, the longevity in sports, in professional sports, is it's pretty cool to be a part of. Really, it takes a lot of on the onset. You said right, luck or talent, and I got asked multiple times around the 10 year, like with Baltimore, such a young team. Like, hey, how
Yeah,
do you stay healthy? How do you do this? Like, guys, I wish I could sit here and tell you that I have this amazing training room plan that helped keep me healthy this entire time. And sure, I've had things pop up. We all do, but so much of it is being fortunate and being a little bit lucky as well. I
yeah,
mean, I had in 2019 when I had my stomach stuff, and maybe the worst I felt in a whole nother story, probably like how I didn't hurt myself being 20 pounds under what I normally throw at, and going out there every 5 days and pitching exhausted for 3 months. Like I look back on that, and we talk about looking back on accomplishments and celebrating them. I look back on it and say, I'm super fortunate that I didn't hurt myself. Whether it's a shoulder, a back, and elbow, so many things could have gone wrong those 3 months, and it didn't.
yeah,
And there's guys that go out there and pitch tired and pitch sore, and they do a lot of damage that keep them from being on the mound for a long time. And so the longevity is another thing that I look back on, and I mean, I didn't plan on getting to 10 years when I started, right? There were times going through arbitration that I was just hoping to make it through that year. Can I
Yeah.
please get tendered here in
Tender me. Yeah.
2017 with the Minnesota Twins? So I had that talk with Elizabeth, that year after the 10 years. Is so many times I was hoping to make it to the end of the year that making it to 10 years was just something where I could breathe and be like, wow. Sometimes I didn't think I was going to get here. It wasn't a goal. So longevity is something I can look back and be really thankful for.
Yeah,
Yes, did I?
that's
No? Okay.
incredible, man. One thing that's just always struck me about you, and it's something that I also put some pride on my career as well, is staying healthy as you can, right? But like, you have it's colitis, right? That's what
Yep. Ulcerative colitis. Yep.
ulcerative colitis, which it's pretty much under control now, or is it
Mm-hmm.
you pass it? But yeah, for a year there, you were battling that hard. You had the slap tear that you had to kind of change pitching motion to fix,
Mm-hmm.
because that's
Yep.
something you get a surgery for that. You don't know what's going to happen
Right.
after that,
Right.
and that's not a chance that a lot of guys don't want to take. I I feel like there was some luck involved with like getting to the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are like, oh, we have a good program for this now, even though like maybe 5 years before
Yep.
that they wouldn't have. Um,
Correct.
and you went and you did the work at the baseball ranch. I remember talking about this and doing all the connection balls and like the stuff that people would think was weird at the time. Now everyone does this stuff, but
Yep.
like that is how like it's like, oh, I just made an adjustment in the like moment to moment. Like, oh, I have this problem. Let's figure this problem out as quickly possible and come up with a strategy.
Yeah.
It's not sexy for you kids at home who might be listening to this. It's not. There's no equation. It's literally just I'm committed to making the adjustments that I need to make in order to stay on the field. And you
Yeah.
did a great
And
job with
a
that.
lot of it too is, and I think anybody that has a lot of awareness will tell you you got to have the right people around you, and you have to have people that you can trust and go to with issues and be able to say yes to their suggestions. And one of those was around that time after 2016 when I had that flare up of that slap tear, and I started playing catch and I thought I needed a cleanup surgery. Like
Mm,
that's how bad I felt. And when I called Brian DeLunas, who at the time was running his pitching program in St. Louis, and then a couple years later gets on with the Mariners, I said, "Hey, coach, I need to do weighted balls or something. Like my shoulder's killing me, and I got to do something different." And he said, "Don't do that. Go see this guy." And I was living in Fort Myers at the time. Drive up to Lakeland, see Randy, and this was like Christmas time
mm,
after the worst season of my career, and I'm panicking. And he's trying to overhaul my motion. And when I played catch that day, 100 different throws, my arm didn't hurt, and I was bought in immediately. And I said, Randy, I know this is probably going to be tough, but this is what I got to do. Like, so I'm all in. Let's do it. And yeah, the first day. So that was the first off season where Dad Levine and Derek Falvey come
yep.
to the Twins, and I meet Derek for the first time. He goes, "Hey, you got that from Randy in Florida, didn't you?" I was like, "All right, I feel so much better about this already
And they
because they
know,
knew where I
oh,
got it from. They know about it, and yeah, did I fight some a little bit of making fun of from Phil Hughes and Glenn Perkins? Yeah, I did, but like I had the right people in my corner and I trusted it, and it made a big difference. A big part of signing with Texas in 2020 was my UC was still in a tough spot, and they had a dietitian who had dealt with 4 people on their team with UC. I said, Elizabeth, if I go anywhere else and I don't feel good, we're going to be miserable as a family. Like, this is
yeah,
where I need to go. I had the right people in my corner. And wouldn't you know it, like by the end of 2020, I felt really good. And, it was just in the right spot. So that has so much to do with it. Having the right people in your corner and trusting those people and allowing them to really help you.
yeah. That's what it comes down to. I so we're into the baseball, and I love that you just brought up Phil and Perk because we're going to get into them in a moment. But I want to talk about just the beginning there because you were called up in 2013. I came up in 2014. That's when we became teammates. We played in AAA for like 2 games. I think I came
Mm-hmm.
to the playoffs. We were on the same team for like a
Yep.
week. We got eliminated in the first round against Pawtucket. I remember that pretty clearly. I don't know why I remember that so clearly, but I do. So a lot of people, assume that getting to the major leagues is like the ultimate goal. Of course it is, right? We want to get there, but it's a two part
Mm-hmm.
milestone, and
Mm-hmm.
staying is tough, especially as a starting
Way
pitcher.
harder.
Way, way, it's the hardest part, and a lot of it is you know that going in. So you get up there, and once you're there, you're like, okay, how do I stay? And that's just a whole nother, it's a new world of different stress and anxiety and just like overlooking, like looking at your performance, just overanalyzing and looking at results. And you can't help it because you know how much it has to do with your career moving forward. So I remember distinctly mine because Trevor Plouffe was part of it. But do you have a moment or maybe an outing where you remember like, oh, I'm a big leaguer. Like that was I just that right there was what you're supposed to do, and that's going to keep me here. Or was it or did it kind of slow burn over time? You're like, oh, you just
It
kind of looked up.
was,
You're like, I'm doing this.
yeah, I mean, I think it was probably multiple times in my career, honestly. Um, I think 2014 was such a 2013 was just first full season back from Tommy John, get called up, struggled for most of my 10 starts. Had everybody telling me, "Hey, throw your sinker, you'll be fine. Throw
Hmm.
your sinker, mix your slider in. They're going to hit ground balls, you'll be great." Well, that carried me to a tune of a 6.5 ERA through 10 starts. So
Hmm.
it like all the advice just it wasn't necessarily carrying water as much because it wasn't translating to we're going to keep you here because I got sent down. The next year, um, it it was just such an up and down year because I was either 5 innings of 0 runs or 4 innings of 6 runs, and then at the end of the year, yeah, you have a solid 4 or 5 and you made 30 starts, but you're like, yeah, I rode an emotional roller coaster every 5 days. I
Yeah.
didn't know which guy was going to show up. But one start at the end of that year, I just dealt with so many negative thoughts that year because I would get in the second inning and I would given up, you know, 3 or 4 runs already, and I'm thinking, here we go again.
Hmm.
Um, and I had thought back to a chapel that Dave McIver had done, and he'd
Yep.
said, "Hey, you can't have thankfulness and anxiety at the same time. Like that part of your brain that controls those emotions can only have one." And I was having I wouldn't say it was full on anxiety because that's not, I think full on anxiety is way more serious than I was having on the mound at the time. But I was having this, here we go again. I've got to keep this guy from scoring type thought. And it was the first time in my career where it really clicked was Detroit was in Minnesota. Kurt Suzuki, who is one of the biggest catalysts for me becoming a longevity successful style pitcher,
Hmm.
after the first 2 innings, they're trying to win the division. We stink. And I give up 2 runs in the first, 2 runs in the second. David Price is on the mound. I'm like, oh boy, here we go again.
Yep.
And Kurt comes up and says, hey, we need you to get through 5 tonight. It's going to be really big. And I look at him, I'm like, I said, Kurt, you want me to get through 5? How am I going to get through the third inning? Right? Like, I'm just
Kurt
giving up
never
2 in the
phased,
first, 2 in the
dude.
second.
Always under control.
Never.
He's always the
Always.
voice of reason. Yeah.
And in that moment, I kind of thought back to that chapel, and I started taking the mound those last 3 starts and being like, all right, I'm going to make sure that when these moments arise, I'm going to be thankful for where I'm at in the moment, and I'm not going to think about what could happen and what is in the future. Um, and the other part of that meeting was he said, hey, I don't think they're respecting your fastball, so we're going to throw fastballs until they start hitting it. Well, I look up and I didn't throw another off-speed pitch until the fifth inning. And you look back at that 2014 Tigers lineup, and that's not a team that you're going to throw a bunch of fastballs
No, it's
to.
not.
So it's just not right. Well, we ended up, I don't remember if we won or not, but I made it through the fifth or sixth inning. And those next 2 or 3 starts that year really allowed me to believe that I was going to be able to do this because I was able to change my mindset from these negative thoughts of worrying about certain things and making sure I stayed in the moment of, okay, be thankful that you're even here. Make sure that your brain is turned toward gratitude instead of worry. And that allowed me to really kind of get through some of that. And then the last start of the year is still one of my favorite starts of my career where if the Tigers win, they clinch the division. If we win, they've got to play 163. Once again, David Price is on the mound. Comerica Park is packed with 45,000 fans.
I started the
And
day
we
before
lose,
you. I
we,
remember
we
this.
lose the game, right? We
Yeah.
lose the game
Yeah.
like 4-2 or something. But I threw 6 innings and I'm literally taking the mound and I'm looking around and I'm praying and saying, just being thankful that I'm on the mound at that moment and just wasn't phased by that moment. And that really kind of allowed me to springboard into a certain part of my career. And, went through a lot more struggles after that. But the next moment that kind of allowed me to maybe see that I could have, do this was when I get sent down 3 years later in 2017, you're finishing up Tommy John rehab, I believe,
Hmm.
and I get sent down in 2017, and I'm just through the worst 10 starter stretch of my career after changing my motion. I've got like a 9 ERA through 10 starts, and Thad and Derek, they really were confident and they were encouraging when they sent me down, and they sent down a message where they said, "Hey, Stu Kleiber, pitching coach at the time, Stu, tell him this." And even though I'd struggled for a year and a half in the big leagues, they said when you throw your fastball in the strike zone over 50% of the time, you're unbeaten with a 3.5 ERA in those starts. When you don't, you're awful with a 7, whatever it was, right? And it allowed me to simplify things. It allowed me to have confidence in my fastball. And I went on until I got sick in 2019. I went on a 2 start stretch where I really trusted my fastball, really started trusting my four seamer more as well. And I think I realized that maybe this is a little bit simpler than I'm making it, and maybe diving into video for X number of hours and really trying to key in on this hitter and that hitter.
Hmm.
Let's get back to the simple things, and let's make sure that my fastball is doing what it needs to do. So I would say those two moments, really kind of springboarded the couple years that followed.
That uh, those are incredible times too, because I was there for all of it, honestly. That started in Detroit. I started the day before you, and I was under this. I had the same thing. I was like, I had a is my rookie year. It was my 2013 for you, and I had a 7.8 even after this start. So I was the same thing. I was like, oh God, I gotta throw that. I show that I can throw past the fourth inning, because the fourth inning comes, and I would give up
Mm-hmm.
5 runs. And I remember Plouffe saying something like, this was in Chicago, and he came over to me, and I was throwing against Sale, and we put up 4 or 5 on him in the first couple innings because he didn't know this, but we definitely had him tipped. Thank you, Torrey Hunter. We just raked him that year, but you got to take advantage of those days. So
Mm-hmm.
I went out and I threw well for the first couple innings, striking everybody out, and then third, fourth inning came around, like 3 straight hits, a couple runs, second, third, no outs, and I was like, it's happening again. I remember Andy, Rick Anderson came out, and then we had talked about it. I was like, you just need to say, hey, do you want this to happen, or do you want to do something about it? That's all I want you to say to me. So he came out, Kurt said it, like nodded, and then Plouffe stayed and he said, hey man, do you want to get pulled again and just kind of walk off in shame, or do you want to like sack up and just do this? Like he goes, it's up to you. I'm gonna be at third, so I'll be over there. You me. He kind of said it like kind of like, dude, do you want to? It was a day game Sunday, Chicago. Both of us are out of it. No one cares. There's no one there. I remember,
Yep.
and I remember striking out the side after that point. It was like VC8, who just swung as hard as he could, and just three
Mm-hmm.
pitches struck him out. And I think I got like Jose Abreu or something to end the inning. And I walked off and I fist pumped. It's the fourth, and I'm fist pumping. And I remember everyone looking at me like, what's this guy doing? But I'm like, that was big for me. That was a
Mm-hmm.
moment. I had a moment there. But the one thing that really struck me right there, what you said, was how gratitude was your way of like going to get out of the looking forward, looking back, what just happened or what could happen, or worry. The worry. I
Yep.
like worry is a great word. That's a perfect word for that situation. And I was the same thing. I would get spun and I would be like, oh no, I'm going to look bad, or it'll be embarrassing, or whatever the worry is coming
Mm-hmm.
from. But what worked for me was I channeled to I've always loved movies. I love sports movies growing up, but I love all movies now. And I'm the hero's journey guy. When the hero's about to get in a fight and he's getting beat, and then you see him get like determined and the eye slit and the music picks up, and then you're like, yes, let's go. The end scene of the end game of Avengers. Like it's
Yep.
still, I know it's cheesy, and all of the Lord of the Rings, right? All the charges, but I get goosebumps to this day of all. I just love it.
Yep.
And that's where I thought about that, like that moment, just like instead of being like, go, you're an animal trapped in a cage, go out of the front door,
Yep.
just do it. It's there. You can do it. You belong here. And that worked. That worked really well. It doesn't matter how you get there, but that is kind of the way the switch flips. And it's really interesting how different people things can mean something differently for them, but it gets them in that zone that you need to be in to get out of that situation. So that's awesome. I think it's time that we talk a little bit about your mentors, our mentors, because who are we
Yep.
kidding? They were my mentors too. We played with Philip Hughes, who came over in 2015, correct? He wasn't there in 14. It was Kevin Correa was our guy in 14.
Yep.
I believe Phil came over and took his spot in the rotation. So we had Phil Hughes, who was one of our guys that would talk to us a lot. We had Glenn Perkins, obviously, the local boy, and then Mike Pelfrey, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so one of our it's funny. I looked online and on your Wikipedia page it says Phil Hughes is one of your mentors, which I think is hilarious. Um, so if you had to pick one thing that Phil Hughes taught you or you learned from Phil Hughes that stands out in your mind, what would it be?
You know, um, Phil, I would say I was able to look back on he had accomplished a lot
Yeah.
in his career to that point. And, he probably signed with Minnesota on a deal that, you know, probably because of his year before where he struggled, wasn't quite what it should have been.
Mm,
And I think Terry Ryan then, he fixed that after that year in 2015 and gave him the extension and probably paid him what he should have been paid. Um, Phil was probably about the epitome of the same guy all the time. And it he threw the ball really well, obviously in 2015. Set the record for strikeout to walk, and wasn't 95 to 97. Had a great curveball, but he did it with his fastball and his cutter and mixing in curveballs. And I think he is between being the same guy every day and really trusting what he did really well. To the tune of here it is in the fastball, here it is in the zone, and go hit it because I'm not going to walk anybody, right?
mm,
Um, and I think the other thing that really struck me about him was if you remember at the end of that year, um, he had a chance to get one out
hmm.
in the last series
I
of the
do
year
remember
for a
this.
massive inning bonus, massive inning
I
bonus
believe it was $500,000 for one out.
for one out. And I think we might have been in Detroit again. We ended in
We
Detroit,
always
and
ended in Detroit.
he we did. And he said something that really struck me was that I had 32 chances to get an extra out, and I didn't do it. So no, I don't want to pitch.
As he was just reclined in his chair,
How
like
many
just done.
people? How many people would have thrown to get one out? Right, almost everybody.
Probably
And
everybody,
I
yeah.
think I think that was around the time where I started to realize don't give away any inning, any out, and if you give up two in the first, like I'd already done, keep going. If you've
Mm,
given up four in the first two innings, find a way to get through the third, find a way to get through the fourth, and don't give up innings and outs because you're going to look back at the end of the year, and that's how you get to 200 innings, which I've never done, but so I'll say 180 innings. That's how you get to 180 innings is by on the days where you don't have your stuff, you get through the fifth and the sixth inning, and you look back and you say, "Man, that wasn't pretty. Yeah, I gave up 4 runs, but I got through six, helped out the guys in the bullpen, and you're going to thank yourself at the end of the year by the
mm.
fact that you didn't cash it in and be done in the fourth."
Yeah. And by the way, the most innings you can throw, whatever that is, no matter what the game of baseball does, and obviously I'm hoping some younger guys listen to this and learn something. Um, no matter like how the game changes and what a lot of innings looks like or what that number is, if you throw the most that you could have thrown and you do the things that Kyle's talking about now, um, like there's gonna be a spot like that. People want that no matter what your stuff's like, no matter what. If you eat innings, there will always be value in that. And you'll hang around a lot longer, and it's another guy who was told that same thing in the minors, and it showed. Zach Littell, I remember him telling me that his only goal was to throw as many innings as he could. He wanted like to lead the league in innings. Like that was his goal,
Mm-hmm.
which is I never heard anyone say that before because I'm like, I mean, that makes sense, but I never wanted to do that. I want to strike everybody out. But I'm like, then again, that's my thing, right? So,
Yep.
but if you take that to your work and it helps you buckle down because things can speed up and it can feel it's life or death out there. It feels like it. And you can find a way to get back on track and like let the team go get themselves out. Sometimes they all get excited. Like, yeah, we're up 3 runs. And then suddenly you're like, here you go. And they're like, oh, they're getting themselves out for 5 innings. Thank you. Appreciate it. I only had to
Yep.
throw 40 pitches. That happens all the time. So take advantage of that stuff. Another guy we got to touch on, and this doesn't even have to be pitching related. We can say, I know what my biggest takeaway from Mike Pelfrey has been, but if you had to give me one piece of maybe wisdom that Mike passed on, because you know him, he had wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which one stuck with you the most?
So I spent a lot of time with him. whether it was golfing or anywhere. He was just a guy that, for the most part, you wanted to be around, right? Like
Yeah.
a guy that was always laughing. He went through his struggles, so when he spoke to you about struggles, you knew it was coming from a place where he had been through it. I think because of his sinker and, I mean, we'll just say lack of breaking stuff because
Lack
he
of
didn't
off
have
speed
great,
at all.
right? Like no off speed. He was a guy that I really could talk to about, okay, fastballs both sides. How am I going to use my fastball and allow it to set up everything else? That's probably the biggest thing on field that I took away from him. And he was just, you want to talk about a dog that just went out there and he was just an imposing presence. And he kind of just bullied people with probably what he would say fairly average stuff,
Yeah.
but he just went out and bullied people for a long time. But I think off the field I probably learned just as much from him. He was somebody, and this might sound crazy, but like my first 3 years in the big leagues, I don't know that I paid for a single thing. And it was him and Kurt Suzuki that just took me under their wing and said, we're going to go golfing and you're not paying for it. And when you get the chance to do this in 5 years, if you're still here, you get to go do that. We go out to breakfast, no, we're not splitting it. I'm buying your breakfast. We're going to talk life and baseball. And then when you get a chance to do this, you do it for somebody else. And once again, that sounds simple. It sounds silly, but um, there are so many ways where we get pulled and asked for money and asked for this and resources. When you have somebody that pulls you aside and says, "I'm going to show you kind of the way that I was taken care of," that meant a lot because we were in that time where Pelfrey. I'm not going to say they were bullied because that's not it, but young guys in the early 2000s were like not treated as well, right?
Definitely
Like
hazed a lot more than they
they were
are,
hazed
even
more,
when we
right?
were
Like
rookies,
I'm
but
sure they got stuff paid
definitely
for
now.
them. I'm sure they got taken care of in that way. But like they were hazed a lot more. Whereas Pelf and those guys, like they kind of shifted that a little bit in the twin system. We're like, all right, we're gonna take care of you guys. Yeah, we're gonna give you a hard time, right? Like my first week in the big leagues, he could have blown me up. I was making a sandwich in the third inning because that's what we did in AAA.
Hmm.
And he goes, if Justin Morneau sees you make this sandwich right now, he's gonna kill you. Go get your butt back in the dugout and watch the game. He could have done so much more, right? Five
Hmm.
years prior, there'd have been an embarrassing situation for me. He didn't do that to me. And he taught me a lot off the field of how to be a professional.
Yes. Also, he also taught us how to eat 14 donuts in one sitting.
I mean, if
Uh,
we can get into a lot of the crazy things he's done for $100
it
because he
didn't matter.
he
He
was
wasn't listening to how much money either. He was just like, I bet you. He's like, I'm in. I don't care how
I
much.
mean his famous line was Gibby, there's a price for everything.
Gibby,
And
there's a price for everything. Everything he said, he always say your name too. He'd be like, hey, May. And then he'd say his wisdom like he's a dad. Well, he is a dad. But
yep,
like that's how my dad speaks to me. Trev,
yep,
let me tell you about, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm about to get some wisdom. But the thing I learned the most, the big thing for him though, and I think you heard this too, because he had been a free agent, we hadn't. So this is what we thought about free agency. He said, you only got to trick one team. You only got to
yep.
get one, guys. Trick him, and then he like got the he came to the Twins, got extended, and then he got signed with the Tigers. I remember talking to him when he was the Tigers. He's like, or you can trick three, either one. Trick as many as you can.
Yep,
So yeah, self-deprecating guy. I definitely learned that self-deprecation is a great way to get through the ups and downs
sure.
of playing. It was very much. I love Pelf, except for that one time. I got knocked out in the first. You might remember this. I got knocked out in the first inning in Milwaukee. And this is about when Irvin Santana was coming back in 15 when I got moved to the bullpen later.
Mm.
And I was super distraught because like crap, that's gonna send me back to AAA, man. That was bad. And I went in the dugout in the first in the clubhouse in the first inning. Pelf's in there, so is Hughes, Phil. And I'm like, hey guys, what do I do? I got my stuff done. Should I go back out there? And they're like, and then Pelf goes, no, man, that was terrible. He goes, don't show your face out there. That's embarrassing. I'll go, okay. And the next day, Molly calls me in the office. He goes, why didn't you come back out?
Yeah,
And he like
I remember that.
wore into me. I'm like, I'm gonna take this. I'm sorry. But I asked Pelf and he said to do the opposite. He goes, all right, but just make sure you're out there. Pelf didn't get in
Yep.
trouble. And I'm like, come on, Pelf, man. Molly just lit me up. He goes,
Where were you at on that one?
he's like, sorry, bro, I got it wrong. Some people like it the other
Yeah.
thing. I'm sorry, I did my best. So no hard feelings is funny, but it's just that's so just reclining in his chair like I don't know, man. Don't go out there. That's embarrassing. He goes, no, man, that's embarrassing. Like it just happened. I'm a rookie. Leave me alone. Just tell me what to do. Don't tell me how bad it was. But now looking back, I'm glad all that stuff, all these guys were like that because it made a lot of fun. Um, so uh, this is a question that's only for this that I you were the guy I need to wait to ask this question because in 20 was I believe it was 2015 when Blaine Boyer joined us and Tim Stoffer. Remember them? We signed them.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. So this is before I got married. I was about to propose and we were thinking about I was thinking about kids and when we're gonna have them and whether or not we're gonna have kids when we played. And I remember Tim Stoffer had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and he walked into the field every single day like a zombie. He was like, I haven't slept in 6 months, and it terrified. It genuinely did. I would joke about it, but I was like, I don't want to. I can't afford to do that. I got to be a big leaguer. Um,
Right.
but you have 4 kids now, and you're free agent and still doing this thing. And you always were making sure you were talking to them and FaceTiming during the day. And I remember being like, how's he like how is the attention? How are you able to do that? So I guess what my question is, what is like the because I kind of regret not having my son because he's not going to know me as a baseball player, he's just going to see pictures. Um, what's the best part about having your kids be with you while you get to play baseball? And then what's the hardest part about
Um, I think the best part by far for me is that they do not care how it goes on the
it? Yeah.
mound that day. They don't. Um, I mean, shoot, I could get here. The more I talk, I'm gonna get emotional. But like they they are when you go through a struggle, when you walk out of that locker room. I thankfully I had learned this in college and early in pro ball because my parents made trips everywhere to see me play, thankfully. And I realized that if I'm gonna take the baseball field home, I'm going to ruin a relationship with my parents in the time that they spent to see me. So I knew when I had kids and got married to Elizabeth, it was like, all right, I'm going to leave the baseball field at the baseball field. But when we would walk out of the locker room in Minnesota and the family room's right there, and when those kids, no matter how many it is, 1, 3, or 4, when they just want to see you, regardless of the outcome of the game, it is the best thing in the world. And it is the fastest way for me to realize that what just happened, it does matter, but it does not matter in that moment. And it is such an uplifting moment. They don't realize it, right? I'll be able to thank them when they're able to conceptualize that, but they don't realize how much that helps me in that moment of being able to just see way past the baseball player. Because really, I think when I got myself in trouble the most in my career is when I saw myself as just a baseball player and I forgot about so many other things that hopefully I'm here to do in life, right? Um, in a way, it's kind of a cool thing for you. I agree. Having him at the field, being able to share that experience with him is great. Um, but I think only being seen as a baseball player when you're struggling is really tough. So that's by far the best part. Is just the distraction from it. The hardest part um, is I think being away from them. 2023, and part of the reason why coming to St. Louis in 2024 was so important for us as a family. 2023 was one of the most fun seasons I had on the field, one of the hardest seasons I had off the field. Elizabeth had just given birth to Novely, our fourth, in December, and she just couldn't travel as much. We had 2 of the 4 in school. We had a newborn, and the kids couldn't miss school. So I would guess that I saw Elizabeth and 2 kids at a time more than I saw everybody at once. I was
Mm.
flying back for off days, leaving at Sunday at 7 p.m. just for 24 hours at home on a Monday, because it's tough. I mean, it's tough to not see them for almost 20 days at a time at some point. Thankfully for FaceTime, it really kind of bridges that gap, but it's not the same. But that summer, that summer was tough. Um, Great on the field, like I said, but um, realized and really showed how much it stinks being away from them. Once they really kind of get into the flow of having dad around. So um, yeah, that's absolutely the hardest part. The sleep, sure, the sleep's tough, right?
Yeah.
But that's why I get a 4 shot espresso latte every single day, and that's why you saw me with a coffee every single day
Yeah.
because it's like, you know what, you can and the pre-workout, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
get a little bit of
Thank you,
caffeine in you,
pre-workout.
and you can kind of get through just about everything.
Yeah. That's yeah. I still like I just know I know how I am now with him and just like not having I could technically just be I'm not gonna do anything today and still. Um but I yeah, I envy you guys. All the respect in the world for not just you guys doing it, but like shout out to the partners doing
Yeah,
all the other stuff. Because when you're gone for 20
yeah.
days, she
Honestly,
is
like I,
on.
coaches' wives, players' wives, like in military wives, you can extend this to
Yeah,
any
they carry
any
this thing.
family. They carry it,
This
right?
does
Like
not happen without them.
I couldn't do it without Elizabeth being, not only able to juggle a bunch of schedules, but she took a lot of sacrifice to say, you know what, yeah, I'm gonna go on this flight here. I'm gonna make this driving trip to see Kyle and take 4 kids and do all
Hmm.
this because it's important. And but not only that, just like making sure the house, ran and the kids to school and doing all this stuff by herself because she's a single mom for 6 months of the year.
Hmm.
And it's not unique to baseball. There's a lot of other jobs that do that. So, but if you're in one of those jobs, I think you understand that having a wife that gets it and having a mom who can really do a lot of the things on her own is it's the only way I've been able to play here for this many years.
Yeah, I mean it's not doable without it. So couple quick ones, won't keep it much longer. You are, I believe, a free agent again for the fourth time, fifth time, fourth time, one of those. It's been a bunch.
Yeah, I think
If we're
I think
thinking
fourth.
about it, it's it's
Yep.
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've been through free agency a bunch, and
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of lot of moving pieces and stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of options for where you could go. So talk a little bit about your experience with free agency and like how's it going right now, or is it just kind of wait and see, just like kind of slow playing it, seeing where you want to go, and how have your priorities changed a little bit for like where and what? How is it different, like, for example, this time than like that first time?
Yeah, the first time, the one of the best pieces of advice I got from Brian Dozier was don't be afraid of free agency.
Yeah.
Um, you know, don't worry about what's going to happen, um, because it's going to end up taking care of itself.
Yeah.
Sometimes negatively it takes care of itself, and sometimes positively. But yeah, it's been a unique experience each time. The first time I was coming off the season of being really sick with UC and not knowing what was going to happen. Thankfully, got on with Texas and um, traded and then signed with Baltimore. It's so crazy how I feel like for us it's been pretty clear which team is the best one and the right fit for us. Thankfully, and then going into last year, as soon as St. Louis got in the mix, it was like, okay, this is going to be hopefully the scenario that we've wanted. And this year it's been a little different just because playing at home was a lot of fun. I was 35 miles from the stadium. Driving in every single day was incredible. So kind of waiting and seeing which scenario is going to be the best scenario for the family. So we've had conversations with multiple teams from what I'm hearing from my agent, and I think I'll have an opportunity to pitch, which is good. Sometimes you never really know what that's going to look like. So I stayed healthy last year, feel really good right now, and we'll kind of see where it goes. I'm not necessarily in as much of a rush as I have been in the past. I've never been someone to set the market for starting pitching. Never been the person to rely on this number or that number to get
Mhm.
what I feel like I need. It's figuring out what's the best spot for this family of 4 and Elizabeth, and let's go from there.
That's a nice place to be. Not a lot of people can say they've gotten this far into free agency and got to do it this many times. So, just I'd say throw that on the old accolade shelf as well.
Yeah,
All
thank
right,
you.
I'll let you go, but I have my one last parting thought, and I ask this of everybody, and so feel free to answer as long or short as you want. Are you happy, Kyle Gibson? Are you happy?
uh,
Could you
am
say
I
you
happy?
are? You're smiling right
Uh,
now, so
yes, I am. There's a lot of reasons that go into that, right? We could probably take a long time. I think, you as a dad, you get a lot of joy. I think that's two things, right? You got happiness and you got joy. And I think happiness is something that's probably more day to day, and then you have joy that is a little bit more long lasting. And families, for me, my kids have always given me joy. So I try to live that out. You've seen me as a dad for a long time, but yeah, it's been. I am happy. So and I think the best thing that, and me, I'm a talker, so I'm going to divulge a little bit, but
go
like,
for it.
but I think being able to be content is important as well, right? Like I've had a lot of fun doing what I've done, and hopefully I get a chance to do it again. But I'm also at a spot where like, who knows what free agency is going to bring? And if it brings where you don't have an opportunity to pitch, then I think I still can be pretty happy because I've got been able to do this for a long time and have a lot of fun. So I think because of making sure I'm not just looking at myself as a baseball player and understanding that I have a lot of other things going on outside of it, it allows you to have a happiness that's not relying on the game, because relying your happiness on the game, as you have known as well, whew, that can be exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes me very happy to hear. And it's been an honor to talk with you today, but also to be your teammate and be your friend. It's always a blast talking to you. And also I can say if if the opportunity doesn't arise and it has let's just say it, retirement's pretty awesome.
Yep.
I think said, yeah, I wish I would have got to 10 years, but at the same time I'm like, but I've had amazing. I'm having a blast. I'm having a blast. It's been awesome. It
Yep.
really has. I'll never forget when Joe Mauer came into me. Came in what he retired after 18, so he came in 19. And
Mm-hmm.
hey Joe, how you doing? He's like, great man, just another day. Didn't say in the show that time. And I go, how's retirement? And then he got like he kind of came up close. He's like, Trev, you're gonna love it. It's great. He goes, I got a thump still to play golf, but
Yep. Yep.
man, man, it's awesome. I'm like,
Yep.
cool. Can I do it now? And I had to wait a few more years, but here we are. Here we are. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, guys at home. Please, that concludes the show. So make sure you hit a little 5-star review here on Spotify if you're there. Leave a comment wherever it is you can leave a comment. It helps people find the show, and that would mean a lot to me. And I will see you next time on Cut on the Diamond with a brand new guest, which I do not know who it is yet. So you're going to have to wait till it comes out. All right. Everyone have a great day. Drink some water, and I will see you next time.